Hello and welcome to the Mindset and Mindfulness Podcast with me, your host, Sandy Powell.
Finding your purpose and going after your goals is something today's guest speaker, Karms Fung, is helping others to do. So she is an NLP coach. She has an amazing book club. That's actually the way we connected. And she also has her very own podcast called Excel Purpose. So welcome, Karms.
Place to be here.
Yes, it's so good. Good to see you. So I was listening, of course, to a few episodes of your podcast in preparation of this one. And I noticed there's just an undeniable energy that you bring seemingly to just every project. So I just have to ask, like, how do you get in state? Like, do you have like a little ritual, or do you have a stance? Do you have, a pep talk? Do you do, or is it at this point just a natural thing? Is it just a switch? You just
it is
automatically
just
get
a
there?
switch. No, I would love to tell you there's like it's like a ritual where I'm like, I meditate and then I do some pumping and then I drink some crazy tonic drink with honey, lemon, and some green stuff. No, none of that. I don't have any of those ritual. The funny thing is,
never had, like, it always just came natural to you?
Well, no, that's two different things, right? Like, this is a new thing for me. So I didn't always have this energy.
Okay.
But for some reason, I'm noticing people keep asking me this question now. Where does the energy come from? It wasn't always here. So I didn't specifically do something to work on that. It just became this somehow. Like, I don't know when it happened. I feel like it's probably similar to like the falling in love thing, when someone falls in love, it's like, it's not a particular thing they did. It's not like any one particular occasion.
Right.
It's not like because you did this grand gesture or because we went to this particular event that has happened, because you bought me that cake, because, I don't think it's that. I think it's the adding all the small little things, right? Like, so when it comes to love, it'll be like, oh, okay, every time when they were like buying their meal, they thought about if you wanted one. Like when they wanted to do something special, they asked for your opinion, right? Like, it's all the little thing that adds up. And then one day you're like, I love this person, right? But it's not any one thing. So I think it's similar to that, the energetic state, whatever that is happening now. I think it's that. It's the consistently doing a lot of little things that you didn't anticipate, and it somehow brought me to this point. It's like, okay, I have this now. I'm not aware of it. I know because it's getting reflected back to me like a mirror. Like, people ask, I'm like, oh, okay, something must have changed.
Yeah. So over time, maybe you became more comfortable, or you just enjoying it with like full force,
I think it's coming in alignment with myself more.
Right, exactly. Yeah, okay.
And I feel that is growing as well. Like, it's like I'm getting closer and closer to my true self or my authentic self. And I don't think before this, it's not like, oh, I'm living a fake life. I don't think it's about that. I think it's that when we are taking on activities in our daily life, we are, at least I was, living someone else's story without realizing, though. Like, I feel like all the choices I made are my choices, right? Like, I did the accounting thing, I did the business, I did the MBA, I did all the stuff that happened afterwards, right? All the different certificates and stuff like that. It's like, I feel like these are all my choices.
Right.
However, I think a lot of that, it's like voices that I have taken on without it really being my own choice. And I was living it like I didn't consider it any other option, right? Like, accounting, business, that was just so normal to me, because doing anything else, like, I didn't want to do science because I'm just not in that. Like, my mind doesn't really work like that. And I don't like blood. And so I'm like, oh, well, I'm not going to be a doctor, which is the ultimate pinnacle thing for us. That's what's painted in my head, right? Like, be a doctor, it'll be great. I'm like, well, I'm not doing that. And then my mum wanted me to be a lawyer, and I'm like, well, I'm not doing that. I don't want to fight for cases that's like I don't resonate with. Like, I don't want to take on clients and have to fight for them. That's like morally conflicted, right? So I'm never being a lawyer. So to me, like, business seems like the most natural thing. It's like, okay, well, everyone needs an accountant. We need books to be balanced. Like, I don't have any conflicting moral obligations. I'm like, yeah, seems like the good, boring routine thing to do, right? Then I realized, no, that actually isn't so much me. And now that I'm more myself, people was just like, what? You were an accountant? How? Right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I think it makes sense because, right, when we grow up, we get like all these layers on top, right, from our family, from society, let's just say, right, all these different voices, like you said, and becoming into our own, like we remove those layers and we become more and more aware and more ourselves. So in that moment, as the accountant, you felt like this is the right fit for that moment in time. That was you. And then the more you work on yourself, the more layers you peel back, the more voices you can kind of turn down and, make yourself, listen to yourself more. I feel like that's how you become more true to yourself and find your, true alignment, your true purpose. And I mean, it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
And I
think
guess that's
that
where
is
the energy
process.
also comes from, right?
Yeah.
Like the more you really find your true essence, and it's not a job anymore, right? Like it's your purpose, and
Right.
you're
Yes.
excited about it. It's not like something you have to drag yourself out of bed in the morning. No, like you're excited to do something that really aligns with yourself.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that. It's not a job. I think that's the difference. The key question is like, will you do this thing if you didn't get paid for it? Right? If I didn't get paid to be an accountant, I don't feel like I would just keep working on it, even though I had a lot of pride when I was in there. Like, oh, I'm really good at Excel spreadsheet. Yeah, I love crunching these numbers and come up with like recommendations to make decisions. And I feel like I was being part of a team and I was doing all those things. But if I ask myself that question, would you do it if you didn't get paid? At the time, some of it I would still have done it. That's the thing, because I spent a lot of time outside of my work hours and I will still be doing work. But I think it came from a being responsible team leader or, a responsible team member, depending which stage I was on. But yeah, I think it was that. Like I had something to prove and I wanted to be a good leader or a good team player. Whereas now it's very different. It's like this kind of stuff, right? Podcasts. It's like, is that work? I don't know. Like, like you don't get paid for it, but you want to do it. Right. And same with like writing a book, right? It's like, I'm writing the book, but it's like, man, authors get paid so little for the effort that goes into a book. It's like, why does anyone even do that? Like, you have to be pretty crazy to do that. So yeah, I think it's like you realizing there are actually pockets where you are highly interested in, and if we could gravitate towards them, knowing you may not get paid for it, and you still do it, and if you stick with that long enough, you get rewarded for it. And I think that thing is exciting because money is actually just social currency. Do you love that thing enough to then even spread that love to the world that they are also excited about that thing? And when that comes back, that makes the whole thing very exciting.
Yeah, I see that. Well, now that you brought it up, you're in the process of writing your book. So I wanted to see if you could tell us a bit more about, about that. Like, how did the idea came to be, and what is it about? If you want to talk about that a little bit.
I love that you asked me, but it's probably not ready for it to go out yet.
Oh, no? Okay.
But maybe we'll redo this another time and you can ask me. I'm very excited about writing this book because writing a book is actually a healing process, and I really understand why now.
Okay.
It's because there are a lot of stories that actually nobody knows. It's just me. I never told people about a lot of these things that is going in the book. And for a large part, I think I wasn't ready to share that. And not just the willingness to share, because there's one part about, oh, okay, I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to share these things about my life. It's not actually about that. I'm going from the angle that's like, these things I'm willing to share because I'm learning the lesson. right? And that when I'm writing, I'm really coming from the angle of why am I telling the story? This isn't like I'm just taking a jab in the past, right? Like it's not that.
Right.
It's like for every story that goes in, I'm very much going from the angle of like, how is sharing this help someone out there that might be feeling this, that they're very alone? Because these stories that I'm sharing, it's like I was very alone. I had no one to talk to, right? No guidance, no parents. There was just no safe space. And I know that a lot of people could be in these difficult situations where they just don't feel like there's hope or they don't feel like anyone understands them. I'm going from that angle, right? Like you're not alone. We go through these things. And if I could have them feel that that someone out there understands, then I think it's gonna help people. Like if I had a book or if I knew someone that I could read something and just felt like someone understands me, it would have meant the world to me. And that's why I'm writing it. Yeah.
Oh, that's so powerful. And honestly, that's part of my reasoning here too. Where I started the podcast or the journey in general to do the YouTube channel, all of these things, right? Speaking out about things, helping others, teach about mindfulness, talking about, the challenges that are involved in, just becoming more aware and inviting it in your life and transferring the skill with parenting and things like that. Because I felt, so lost and alone in that too. And I wanted to create that space too and help others, because I feel like if just somebody listens to it and feels better, that they're not alone. Like so many people don't have that close friend or that person, that tribe that they can really be themselves with, really open up, especially in that moment, right? So many times we struggle in silence.
Yes, exactly.
And when we go through it, right, we're kind of, everything's okay, blah, blah, blah. And then like later, like at least that's how I found out with a lot of my other friends just recently too. Like we were telling some stories too where we're like, oh my God, like I wish I would have known that, like we've known each other for like 15 years or something. And there's been literally some really dark parts that we both went through it separately, even though like we had a very good connection. And it's just some of the things we don't share. That's sad, like
But
having
I
to.
think it comes from multiple front, right? Like when we're younger, we didn't have the communication skills to even know how to share that. And I think at certain age, it's like, even if we could say it, what kind of response would we get, right? Because there's a sense of like, well, what if we got rejected or they became less of a friend or, the consequences of sharing, like what happens, right?
Yeah.
Um,
They
and we would never know, right? And I love that, like some of these friends that you mentioned that you're talking to, you share it with them now. That actually just goes to show the kind of person you are, right? You're the kind of person that still have friends from like way back that you could like now share those stories. How amazing is that? Like, because it's like you've known each other for so long and you could share that now. That just brings the bond tighter at this point, and that's awesome because you never know. Like maybe if you shared it when you were kids, like they didn't know how to support you and they feel really bad, right? And then maybe they would have distanced themselves. Like who knows how that would have panned out? But I think the amazing part is that you have these people around you still. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely call my consider myself blessed in
Yeah,
having.
and the energy that you give out, it's so cool. Like when you talk about this is the reason you do it as well. It's like I see that in you, right? It's like there's a certain type of people where we we share our vulnerable stuff or we go out and put the content out even when there are difficult stuff in our life, but we do it because it's like, yeah, it could just be for that one person. It's like you don't know who's listening to that content. You don't know who is suffering in silence. And so, yeah, it's great to be part of your journey and watching that unfold for you.
Yes, thank you. Yes. Oh, I'm almost like tearing up here. Thank you for that compliment. I am really glad you were helping me on this journey. I'm glad we are here to talk about these things. I'm glad I get to open up and share, share the journey and yes, be authentic and vulnerable about these things because yeah, like we said, it's important. It's just important and helping, yes, just somebody out there.
That's ultimate fulfillment, right? Like
That
the
is.
helping people, there's no, when you're on this journey, there's like, you realize there's no greater feeling than helping people, like, and they are feeling that help and they know that they are cared for. And it's like when you know that you're impacting a life, like every human life counts at that point. It's not like how many is hundreds or thousands of people seeing this post. It's like it doesn't matter if one person saw it and that changed that person's life. It's like that counts a lot.
Oh, so yes. And it has a ripple effect. You never know.
Yeah.
Like that one person may have, impact on their children, their friends, their coworkers, and it fans out from there.
Invisible too, a lot of the
Exactly.
times. Like, yeah, like sometimes I would get posts and it's like, Karms, you don't know me. Been following your journey for a while. And it'll be like 6 months later, they might write something and it's like, hey, I just wanted to tell you that you make a bigger impact than you realize, and I really needed to see that post today, right? And it could be just a random post that's like, I made months ago, and it's somehow, who knows what the algorithm does, right? Like somehow it pushes certain things when people need. So yeah. It's an amazing journey to go on.
Yes. Yes, it certainly is. Uh, um, Trying to think which question is good to follow after all this.
Any Go into your heart, ask anything you want. Nothing is
Well, since we're on the heavier side, I want to go with a challenge. Can you remember a challenge that you went through that, was a challenge at the time, but looking back at it now, you would consider it more of a blessing?
The biggest challenge I mean, of course, I have lots of challenges. When you ask that question, the first thing that pops into my mind was definitely when I was young, when my parents were getting a divorced, and I was being left at a guardian's house, which was my grandma, but she was more like a stranger to me because she lived overseas, right, in Australia, and I was in Hong Kong at the time. So that was that I would say that was the biggest challenge for me, watching my mum leave, walk out the door, didn't look back, right? That was the hardest thing. Yeah. So I do actually lead one of that story actually goes into the book. And after mum left, I think the most challenging thing is that we weren't treated very well, and a lot of it was based around money. So I feel blessed on two fronts. One is that when I fall, there's no one to catch me. So I became independent. Like I became a very strong person. I knew that it was always me that would have to catch me. So I think people wouldn't really learn that lesson for a long time normally, but because I learned it so early on, I became a very responsible person up front. So I took a lot of accountability of myself and discipline, and I'm the person that's like motivating myself. I never had to have the parent that's like, go study well and do this and do that. It's like all those voices. I was the one that was whipping myself, right? And that got me the career and professional goals that I got. The one about my being with my grandma and seeing all the chaos around money and what it can do with two people allowed me to make money not a problem. So I made sure I was the kind of person that like I knew how to like invest in things and multiply my wealth, so that I made a promise to myself that people around me, I would never fight about money. So, and interestingly, when I grew up, this is something that serves me quite well, right? To be able to have that currency, to be able to do the things I want without any of these mental burdens, I guess, that can come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I feel like yes, I should share too, because I feel like it's so well similar in our past. Obviously, different stories and different things, but for me it was the same. Like I grew up with a mom and a dad, but then they got separated. Well, my stepdad, I didn't know at the time, but he always treated me, well, let's just say not so nicely. And I never knew why. Like I always, like my sister was the queen. She could not do anything wrong. And I could do the uttermost best of my capabilities, and I just got shit for it. And eventually, they separated. And then he was like, well, sucker, I'm not your dad. I don't need to hang out with you anymore. And I was like,
Wow. That's
wow.
hard.
I was 6, and I was
Oh,
like, oh, wow. Like, and obviously I always felt like, oh, this is my fault, like you do as a kid, right? Like, oh my gosh, like I wasn't a good enough person, a good enough kid that he didn't want, to take this on or whatever. I mean, it was really, yes, go sucker punching, I guess. Um, and then for the
I'm
longest
so sorry to
time,
hear that.
um,
That's tough, right? That's really
was
tough.
it really was and challenging because he picked up my sister every other weekend, and they go on vacation and all these good things, and all of a sudden there was this break. I mean, before that we all happy family and stuff,
What's
right?
the
And then
age gap between you and your sister?
she's 3 years younger, so she was 3.
Okay. Hmm. And you've got, is she the only sibling you have?
I also have a 12-year younger brother. So yeah, my
That's kind of
mom.
funny because like so I have two brothers.
Uh-huh.
I have an older brother, he's 1 year difference, and I have a younger brother, he's 11 years difference. So
Oh,
kind of it's kind of a
yeah, we have
similar
so many
ratio.
similarity, Karms. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. No, but the thing that I was gonna say too, like I didn't, my mom was very inundated with herself a lot, right? Like she had
Yeah.
at some point then 3 children, single, and like I moved out well, okay, first when my brother was born, she had postpartum depression, so she didn't really want too much to do with him, with my brother, and so I
Oh,
became his
wow.
mom. And like
Yeah.
everybody thought it was my child,
Yeah,
because like
right. I
like I
can
was hanging
imagine.
out with him all the time. He was coming to
Yeah.
me for anything and things
Yeah.
like that. Like, I mean, literally, yeah. So I had to grow up fast as well. I always had to take care of,
Yes.
the family, of my mom, my sister, then my brother. I started working very early. As soon as I started like carrying newspapers. Then I worked in, like our youth center. And I moved out when I was
Wow.
16. So, because then they got separated too. And I was just like, I'm not gonna do this again, like I don't wanna like split it up. So then she just left my brother with his dad. She took my sister just temporary for like a month. Then she went to like a group home, and I just moved on my own, and she just somehow managed
Wow.
to get rid of all 3 children, and just kind of went on her own and tried to find herself. So yeah,
That's really tough.
did have
Wow, that's
to
really tough.
just,
I didn't know that.
it just, yeah. But like you said, like that's why I was so, touched by your story, because like it made me remember, like I had to be growing up too. I had to toughen up. I had to be my own motivator. I had to figure shit out. I had to go out there
Yeah.
and do things. And I couldn't, nobody was there to help me or catch me either. There was just nobody. So
You
I'm
know what
usually
I
the
think the
one.
funny part is? I think, people connect. The serendipity, or like the, people, you're meant to connect with the people that you are. I think that's the interesting part. It's like when we talk, it's like we didn't know that about each other, but like during this podcast, it's like now it's like, oh, okay, well, these are like the common thread that like bonds us even more, right? And the funny part is like it's like we found that out in a podcast, and we didn't know that about each other, and yet I think somehow there is still the energy of like being connected, and we had no idea what really connects us. But I've always believed there's some sort of like unconscious mind work going on when you're connecting people with people. You're connecting for a reason. So it's like in time you'll see why.
Yes, definitely.
And some of that is unfolding right in front of us with everyone.
Yes. Yeah, I thought you're going to be doing the most of the talking here, but I just felt like I should be. Yeah, I felt encouraged.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I didn't want to leave you hanging there either. And again, there's so much similarities too, where it's like, oh my gosh, this is really interesting. Like you said, I mean, it's unfolding right here.
Because when you share that and imagine that, it's like it almost breaks my heart a little bit more in that yes, that brought us the strength of the person that we are. But I can imagine how difficult that would be, because the difficult part for me was like I had that same feeling with my older brother. So he was the golden child, but like because he's a boy, he's also the oldest child of my dad is the oldest, and he's a guy. That's a big deal in the Chinese culture. It's like the son of the eldest son is like a golden child by default, by birthright, right? So naturally, my brother had this whole like, he's the one that's very loved. Everyone loves him. And then I'm like this random, nobody seems to love me. Like, especially being a girl. So it was just like by birth, there was nothing I could change about this, like my gender. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, so I would get all this like, I don't know, not very nice things because of that. But and because there's that distinction, it's like I understood I'm copying all this crap because I'm a girl. When you share your story, I'm like, holy crap! Like that's a whole different mind ball game, right? Like, because it's like you and your sister, you're both same gender. It's like that would even be more conflicting. It's like, but why different? It's like, whereas I'm like, now I'm like, shit, I can't even imagine how you would feel, because like at least in my mind I knew it's like boy girl thing, right? And then you're like, what? We're just 3 years apart. We're both girls. Why the difference, right?
Yeah,
like
but
for
his
kids,
daughter. That was the
right
point, right? Which I didn't know. I only
because of the stepdad, right?
Yes.
So
I only met my dad when I was 14.
Yeah.
I never, and I mean, obviously he knew, but like I didn't, you know what I mean?
So the concept of stepdad didn't really hit you at that point. Like you just saw him as a dad.
Yeah, because I never, he wanted me, he didn't want me to know. So everybody treated me.
It was like the hush hush, like
exactly. Like I didn't know, but right. Underneath it all, he was showing it,
Yeah, right. That's really confusing for a kid. Like that's really confusing.
Especially because I just didn't know. Like I always just felt less than, right? Like what is it? What
about the moment when you found out, like you knew, like you when you understood the difference between like natural.
Well, yeah, then obviously then it was like, it all makes sense. Like,
but
I mean, I was still, I mean, 6 is really not, like you're not all and understanding all of it, but it did make more sense, right? Yes. But it was still hurting, right? I mean, how can someone hurt any less for 6 years and pretend dad, and then all of a sudden be like, yeah, sucker, see you never. Like that was just really soul crushing. I mean, like really, like, because I mean, yeah, like, am I really that unlovable that you like can't even bring yourself? I mean, just like a little bit of niceness, like a little bit of a grace period, maybe, or a little bit of a sit down,
Yeah.
like, hey, like I want to explain this to you and blah blah. I mean, you know what I mean? Like there could have been so much could have been done, but it was really
You know
just
what would be really powerful? Sharing those stories and helping step, do you call them step kids? I'm not sure what to call them. Yeah, but children with parents like that, because they would be feeling that and they would be lost. And you would have the strength to and the understanding to carry them through. I think that would be super powerful. Because if you think about it, like not everyone have that experience. Like I wouldn't be able to have that experience because I don't have step parents. And yeah, I think this is probably something that should go out as one of your powerful pillars.
yes, I did have a few step
Yeah,
parents.
even like whether it's like kids hearing you or even adults that's grown up from that, there's a lot of, I would imagine, a lot of pain that they still carry that they may not have fully let go of, and
Oh yeah.
healing them would help them get to their authentic true self.
Yes. Oh, it took me a long time. Like I said,
Yeah,
peeling back layers and layers.
yeah,
Yeah, like there's still
that's beautiful.
still a tiny thing here and there, just because it's underneath so many other things, like.
You know what the best part is about getting through all of that, is actually helping someone else.
Mhm.
When you help someone else, it actually heals you. It actually heals you in a way that you never imagined to. Might just be one of your calling.
But that's so true because my brother just went through separation and his daughter is now 7. So I was able to, be like, okay, like just be super honest and super gentle and tell her, like it's not her fault and things like that. And, like really help them transition in a nicer way, much
It's all
nicer
the
way.
things you would say, all the things that you
Yes.
would have wanted to
Don't
hear.
call your other
And
person
that, yes,
names and things like that, like, yes, you might not be in the best space with your ex-spouse, but dear God, like the one thing you can do is not have that child in the middle, because that's so bad, like feeling stuck there in between them, and having to choose sides and things like that is really, really hard. It adds to you all the stress that you're already having, right? As a child, being separated and, maybe a new place and new things. And it's just so much to handle. So,
exactly. You have all the understanding.
yeah. Oh. Well, thank you for that feedback. I will look into that.
You'll be amazing.
Thanks. Oh, I'm trying to segue back into some of my original
Yes.
questions.
What was your original questions that you wanted to ask?
Lighter, definitely lighter something. So I was like, well, you're a goal coach, what is your number one tip to have people stay motivated?
I think whether it's light things or deep things, I love talking about deep topics because light topics you can like just Google very easily, right? Whereas like deep topics, like, if you have deep things, I reckon like just ask, like go as deep as possible, right? Because that's the kind of stuff like people don't normally talk about. Um, so what's your question? My number one motivational tip.
Well, I imagine that there isn't really. I mean, I feel like it's specific to each person, right? What motivates me might not motivate,
No, I
let's
actually
say.
know the answer to this. I do
Okay,
know.
go for it.
So the motivation for each person, you're right, it is different. However, the commonality is that it's all driven by values.
Mm.
So if I go around and ask people, what's your top 3 values? Most people will say, I don't know. What? I haven't thought about it. Oh, wait, I wrote it down on a piece of paper somewhere. Oh, wait, I think I've been to some workshop that spoke about that. Yeah. And then they try to recall it. Like you're not living it. That you're not aware of what they are. You're living your value, but you're not aware of what they are. That's the problem. So people's values could be like, so mine, I'll give you an example. So my awareness came from like my number one value. And by the way, number one value almost never change. So what you want to do is change the rules around it. So my number one value is freedom, because this was the thing I didn't have. I was like put into a situation I wasn't happy with. I felt caged in. I couldn't go out, all sorts of stuff. So freedom was always really big for me.
Mm-hmm.
My second value though was this is past tense here, safety. So if I have I don't know if you can see the conflict right away.
Yes.
They don't really go hand in hand. Like safety it's not the greatest supportive value towards freedom, right? So that second value is really holding me back at the same time. And you see this play out in my life. Retrospectively, it makes sense, but only because now I'm aware of what they were, right? And that's why I did accounting, very safe job. Not just that, I did it in government. Can you work in a more safe place in government? Right? So it's like I took the safest path possible to build my wealth, right? And it's like, no, of course, you can't make a lot of money in government. There's a very real cap. Like we don't even get our Christmas party paid for. Like they're not paying for your for drinks and party. And no, we were paying for ourselves. Right? Because government are very like, they don't want to be spending taxpayer money, right? So you don't get these glorified like celebration like some people do at like the end of the year. So when I realized safety was like what's holding me back, it's like, okay, I can change that value though. Let's put something better there. So I learned techniques of how to adjust your value. So one, you got to be aware of it. So it's like elicit the value. What are they? What are your values? You got to know the list. What is your current value? Then it's like, okay, within this hierarchy of value, which is our priority, that's actually how we live our life, right? If I'm driven by freedom, I will do whatever it takes to get that freedom, right? And to me, that was about money and status, right? So that's what I would do. Now, freedom is not so much about that. I changed the meaning of that. Freedom is like, okay, I have the choice to whether to work or not work. Great. That's a great meaning, right? But at the same time, I've got to be very aware that by having this, it also means I don't have to get out of bed if I don't want to. That can bring me to a dark hole very quickly, right? Like I could just be a pointless, non-valuable human that just watch Netflix every day, all day for the rest of the eternity of my life. That's a very real life I could live.
But since
and what's the consequences of that? Meaningless, right? Zero add to the world. So then I wanted to bring like contribution up, right? On my value ladder. So it's like, okay, if I bring contribution up to like second, right? Or something of that nature. It's like, now it's very helpful, right? It's like, okay, I have the freedom to choose what I want to do and I'm helping the world. It's like, okay, these are very good supportive pillars.
Right.
So so it's about understanding your value, what's driving you, and then being very intentional about that so that every decision you make actually helps align you to the person you want to become. Now, most people also don't know who they want to become. That's another problem, right? So when I retrospectively look back in my life, no, I made very distinctive points when I'm like, I don't like this person I am right now. Let's change that. Who do I want to be? And I would have to just go, okay, these are the character traits of this person. This person would be kind of cool. I would love to be this person, right? And you start making decision towards becoming that person. I would say I've killed off about 5 versions of me now. Right? It's like I'm at that point where I'm like, oh, I'm at that point again where I need to rebuild a new person. It's like Karms 6.0 now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. See, I was just thinking about that too. I was just talking about that actually with another friend too. Like that, we were also talking about if I had to put my story into a book, it would probably already be 3 separate books.
Right. Yeah.
And, like, because then, like like
Each
me
phase.
growing up and me living in Germany and then me living here in the States kind of thing. And
Yes.
then,
Yeah.
and
And that's the
now,
difficult part, right? About writing the book.
yeah,
Right.
and
Because
now I feel like there's already a new me emerging as well. Like
yes.
me taking all these steps, like that definitely has been growing me as a person as well. So yes, like you said, I feel like, yes, I am, well, lack of better word, but I am about, I'm the snake about to shed my skin and emerge
No,
as a
fully.
as a new
And I see that
version.
about you. Yeah. It's like you're the butterfly that's like, yeah,
Oh,
coming
there
out of
you
the
go,
cocoon, right?
butterfly. Better
Yeah.
image than the snake. But yes, I
Right. You know what it's kind of I have like the butterfly. I think it's a great metaphor, right? Like the coming out of the cocoon and then being the beautiful butterfly. I think for me it was more like the yabby. Do you know yabby? Do you know
what's a yabby?
yabbies are like these they're like miniature lobsters, like think prawns, but like
Oh,
with the claws and stuff, right? Like they basically a miniature lobster. So like when my brother was like, he used to have this fish tank, and so he had these yabbies. I'm like, what
ah,
are these, right? Yeah. So when what I noticed was like the yabbies live, they're like shed the skin, like kind of like the snake,
exactly.
right? Like to shed the whole shell. So
Yes,
they'll shed the whole shell. So then there's the vulnerable moment, right? Like when they shed their shell,
yes,
it's like they're like they can get under attack because like there's no the protective mechanism, but they shed this to grow, right? Similar to a snake, right? You shed it so you can grow
yes, yeah,
because you
crabs do
need to
that
grow
too.
into yeah. Right. So yeah, that's kind of how I see it. It's like when we're going through these phases in life, it's like, okay, there's a part where we feel like we have to kill ourselves. It's like we're literally shedding our entire like shell out, and you have to disarm yourself. It's like this armor protective self that you had that served you well up to this point. It's like you have to shed that whole thing, and then you have to expose yourself, and at this point you can like be like death, right? Like, it feels like you could die. Like literally
Yeah.
there could be people like firing at you in all front, and you're vulnerable at this point
I was gonna
just
say
because
everything seems exposed and
you're
vulnerable. Yes.
yeah, you're exposed, you're vulnerable because you also don't know what's happening. You're like under attack at this point, like whilst you need to grow this new shell. And you know the new shell is growing, but you still have to go through this period where it's like uncertain, you're under attack, you're unsure what's happening. That's what I feel like in life. That's actually what happens. Like when I'm going through the accountant or I'm not, it's like that's scary. Like I also don't know what's happening. Like and prior to that, it's like as a kid and you're like going through the high school and then going through to university or college, it's like that phase is scary, right? Like it's like you're like feel like I'm choosing my entire life here. It's like you're not, guys. If you're young and you're listening to this, it's not your whole life. You can change your career. However, I know it feels like that. But yeah, like that's the phase, right? And you have to kill off these certain bits and whilst you get exposed and under attack. But that's the only way to grow bigger and
Yes.
stronger.
Yes. Oh my gosh, this makes so much sense now. I can really like, it's really sinking in. Like I think this whole metaphor, yes, with the crabby or whatever,
Yabby!
it makes so much sense now. Yes. And I feel like I really feel like, yes, I am in that vulnerable state for sure. I'm just shedding, or maybe I'm about to lose the shell. Like it's right there on the
Right.
cusp.
And you have to hide sometimes, like just like the yabby does. Like, if it sees something scary out there, it's like, it will try and hide under the rock to like, to go undercover, right? And they feel like that is the case. Like, as an entrepreneur, like you going through this process. It's like, yeah, you'll make the content, you go up there and you do that. And then, you might get under attack and you're like, oh damn it, I need to like go in hiding for a little bit. That's okay. That is part of it. That actually is the journey, right? To be
Exactly.
smart about it and to like how can we hold something to defend ourselves, or like how can we get other yabbies like with us so like we feel that we feel
Yeah.
more safe. And a really interesting news just now, it's like that too. Like right now there's this crazy hurricane in Vietnam, and there's all these like footages coming out where it's like these people that are in these like mopeds or scooters,
Yes,
whatever people
yes.
like to call them, the little bike, motorbike, right?
Yes.
And they're fully exposed, and the wind can get them, and they will literally fall in the middle of the freeway or whatnot, right? So there's all these
The two
there's all
cars.
these cars, yes, the
I've
cars
seen
and
it.
the trucks, like helping them
Yes,
shield the
protecting
wind,
them, kind of shielding them,
protect them.
having them in the middle.
Yeah. And
That
all the
is
mopeds are like,
brilliant.
in a group going together. It's like so beautiful, right? That's
Yeah.
what we're doing. It's like grouping of entrepreneur people with the right mindset. Like we all gone on different missions. Like there's different types of entrepreneur, right? And it's like finding your group of mopeds and having like the trucks, and they're like, who has done better, bigger stuff with out there, that's paved the path, and can they shield some of your journey for you. And that's what I love about book club too, right? Like we have these amazing thought leaders that comes in, and they've kind of paved the path. Like they're like the big trucks, right? It's like, okay, no, I know this journey, we can like help you out here, right? Like, yeah, it's like that.
It's beautiful. I mean, that's part of what we're doing here, right? Trying to ignite a spark somewhere in somebody. And that's the beautiful part.
It is a beautiful part, coming together to create impact and helping others.
Yes. Oh, Karms. Oh, I think this is a wonderful, wonderful way to end our show. I really want to thank you so, so much for joining today. It was very powerful, very much more deeper than I had even anticipated, but it's beautiful. I love it because I got to know you so much better. So thank you very much. But before we hang up, I wanted to see if there's something that you're working on or something that you wanted to have, how people could connect with you. Is there something, that you want to point them to?
I don't have anything to point people to at this point. Join book club if you like. It's Excel Purpose /book club. I believe that's a link. I'm sure you can send them off to the link. But yeah, the best place to reach me is IG or Facebook at Karms Fung. Yeah.
I'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah, totally welcoming. If something resonate, just shoot me a message, but just make sure, you're right where you come from. I get a lot of messages, and I gotta say a lot of times I don't write back when people are just like, hi, hello, like, it's like, so say the thing, right? Like I heard you from Sandy's podcast and I was wondering if you could, if you lead that way, I always respond.
Yes, definitely helpful, powerful. You do want to give people a clue of where this is coming from. Yes.
Yeah, it gives the context.
Yes. Well,
thank you for having me, Sandy.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. You take good care.